This, of course, came as a huge shock, and William and I have been doing everything we can to process and manage this privately for the sake of our young family.
Christmas at Windsor was supposed to be the one night when old wounds stayed outside the room. Then Catherine looked across the banquet table and saw something on Camilla's hand that made every private promise suddenly feel meaningless. A sapphire ring associated with Diana was catching the light. Catherine did not whisper to William. She did not wait for dessert. She rose, stopped the banquet, and forced the royal family to confront what no one wanted discussed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine pushed her chair back so sharply that conversation died around her. The Christmas banquet had been arranged as a private family gathering after months of carefully controlled tension. A rare evening when senior royals and younger relatives were expected to leave ceremonial disputes outside the room. But the Princess of Wales, the title given to the wife of the heir to the throne, could no longer pretend the object on Camilla's hand was ordinary jewelry. She looked directly at the sapphire and said dinner would not continue until someone explained why Diana's ring was being worn. William stayed seated, yet Catherine saw the change in him immediately. His expression hardened, his shoulders tightened, and for several seconds he said nothing at all. The ring carried more than financial value for the prince. It belonged to the emotional territory surrounding his mother, a part of royal history that had never become harmless simply because years had passed. Catherine understood that silence now could be taken as acceptance, while William understood that speaking could turn Christmas into a family reckoning. Camilla reacted with controlled disbelief. She looked from Catherine to Charles and insisted that she had been assured the sapphire was available for her use. The queen consort, a term describing the wife of a reigning king rather than a sovereign ruling in her own right, did not raise her voice, but the calmness only deepened the tension. She believed the ring had entered the selection of jewelry available to her as queen. Catherine immediately asked who had given that assurance. Charles set down his glass. The sound was small, but the effect was brutal. "Who authorized it?" the king asked. Camilla hesitated. William finally looked directly at her, and Catherine understood that the question had now moved beyond jewelry. Someone had either misunderstood a private family boundary or deliberately crossed it. Catherine asked for the ring to be removed before the meal continued. Camilla refused at first, saying she would not be treated as though she had stolen something placed legitimately in her possession. William's face changed again. Then he remembered a private conversation from months earlier about that same sapphire, a conversation no one at the table had yet mentioned. What appeared to be an argument over one ring was about to expose something far more personal, because everyone around that table understood exactly whose memory was trapped inside that sapphire. For Catherine, the sapphire was never simply a royal jewel. For William, it belonged to a part of childhood that no palace protocol could rewrite. And for Camilla, refusing to remove it meant defending something larger than a piece of jewelry. It meant defending her place beside the king. Three people were now staring at the same ring, but each of them was seeing an entirely different version of the monarchy. William leaned toward Catherine and spoke so quietly that no one else could hear. He told her he recognized the ring. She reached beneath the table and closed her hand around his for only a moment, but the gesture said enough. For the prince, Diana's jewelry carried more than royal value because every piece could reopen memories of a mother lost too soon, while Catherine understood that her own position as Princess of Wales, the title traditionally held by the wife of the heir to the throne, constantly placed her beside that same powerful legacy. Camilla saw the exchange and immediately understood what it meant. She straightened in her chair as William finally asked where the sapphire had come from. His voice remained controlled, but the queen consort heard accusation beneath every word. She replied that she would not be treated like an intruder inside a family she had spent years supporting. The answer carried years of resentment. She had become the king's wife, stood beside him through public hostility, and still found herself measured against Diana whenever the past returned. Charles watched the tension deepen before finally speaking. He said he had never personally approved the Sapphire for the Christmas banquet. The king's statement changed everything. Camilla turned toward him with visible disbelief, because she had clearly believed the ring had reached her through proper authority. Catherine immediately asked who had authorized it instead. No one moved. William's jaw tightened again. Camilla then explained, through the account she gave privately at the table, that the ring had arrived several weeks earlier, among pieces prepared for her seasonal selection. Seasonal selection was the informal process of choosing royal jewelry for upcoming engagements and family occasions, meaning the sapphire had not simply appeared by accident. Someone had placed it there deliberately. Catherine pressed her again. Who had done it? Camilla hesitated. William recognized that hesitation before he recognized the explanation itself. He had heard something dangerously similar months earlier, during an autumn jewelry review, when another discussion about Diana's possessions had ended with tension rather than agreement. The memory returned with brutal clarity, and suddenly Christmas no longer felt like the beginning of the crisis. The Christmas rupture was painful enough, but the real danger lay months earlier, when one private decision transformed Diana's sapphire from protected memory into a royal possession waiting to be worn. The disaster at Christmas had a beginning, and it came 2 months earlier, behind a closed palace door. There had been no shouting then. No banquet stopped. No family staring across a table. Just a velvet tray, a sapphire ring, and one quiet conversation that several people would later wish had ended differently. Because the moment Camilla asked whether Diana's jewelry could ever be reclassified, the road toward Christmas had already begun. Camilla had entered the October jewelry review expecting routine choices for the winter season. A royal jewelry review was simply a private process in which pieces were considered for upcoming engagements, family occasions, and ceremonial use, according to history, availability, and sensitivity. Catherine had already made her position clear in earlier private conversations. Jewelry strongly identified with Diana could not be treated like ordinary royal property, because its emotional meaning reached far beyond who technically held it. Then the sapphire appeared. Camilla looked at the ring on the velvet tray and asked whether it could be moved into her seasonal rotation. William reacted before anyone else could answer. The prince had joined part of the discussion because several pieces connected to his mother were under consideration, and the request struck him with immediate force. He reached forward, slid the tray slightly away from her, and said quietly that this particular ring should remain untouched. Camilla stared at him. Her reply came slowly, but the resentment beneath it was unmistakable. She told William that he could not control every object connected with Diana forever. The future king answered that respect for history was not the same as being trapped by it. Catherine watched the exchange harden and understood that the argument had moved beyond jewelry. One side saw preservation, the other saw exclusion. The room never reached a final decision. According to a documented private account of the meeting, no approval was granted, no transfer was confirmed, and the sapphire was returned to storage. Catherine left, believing the matter had ended there. William believed the same. Camilla, however, left knowing only that her request had been resisted, not permanently denied. Weeks later, that uncertainty became dangerous. The sapphire appeared among pieces prepared for Camilla before Christmas. Someone had reopened the question after the October disagreement and treated the Queen's request as if permission had eventually been granted. No one had informed William. No one had warned Catherine. And no one had told Charles that a deeply sensitive family boundary was being quietly rewritten. Back at the Christmas banquet, William now understood why Camilla's explanation sounded familiar. She could genuinely have believed the ring had been cleared. But Catherine wanted something more important than explanation. She wanted the name. By Christmas night, that unfinished October argument had become a crisis, and Catherine was no longer willing to let palace procedure protect whoever had brought Diana's Sapphire back into the room. There are moments inside royal families when rank becomes irrelevant because emotion has gone too far. This was one of them. Catherine stood. Camilla remained seated. Charles watched both women, while William struggled to contain years of feelings he had never intended to display at a Christmas table. Then the disagreement stopped being about permission. Catherine accused Camilla of crossing a boundary she knew existed, and Camilla finally answered with everything she had been holding back. Catherine asked the non-essential staff to leave the banquet room. The request stripped away the protective layer of palace ceremony and left the family alone with the argument they had been trying to avoid. A royal household staff member is simply part of the team that manages the sovereign's private and official life, but in that moment, even experienced aides understood they had no place in what was becoming deeply personal. William remained silent beside Catherine. Camilla watched the doors close. Charles tried to stop the confrontation from becoming irreversible. He suggested the Sapphire be removed for the rest of the evening and discussed privately after dinner. The king wanted Christmas restored before resentment hardened into something permanent. Catherine refused. She told him the banquet could not simply restart while no one knew who had reopened a decision made months earlier. Camilla rose at last. Catherine faced her directly and said wearing the ring after the October objection could only look deliberate. She reminded Camilla that William had made his feelings unmistakably clear. The queen consort denied trying to provoke either of them. Her voice tightened as she said she had spent years being compared with Diana and refused to spend the rest of her life behaving as though every connection to the past belonged to someone else. Catherine did not retreat. She answered that respecting Diana's belongings was not an attack on Camilla's marriage or position. William finally spoke too, telling her that the issue was not whether she belonged beside Charles. It was whether a boundary connected to his mother had been knowingly ignored. Pressure broke the silence. Camilla revealed through her recorded account of the confrontation that the Sapphire had been delivered with a verbal assurance that its status had been reconsidered. She named a senior royal household official as the person who gave that assurance. Charles reacted immediately. The monarch knew that official could manage access and arrangements, but could not independently reverse a sensitive family understanding involving Diana's jewelry. William leaned forward. One question remained. Had the official acted alone, or had someone with greater authority told them to make the Sapphire available? Camilla slowly removed the ring and placed it between herself and Catherine. "There," she said. "But this does not end what you have just accused me of." The Sapphire was finally off her hand, yet its removal only exposed a deeper fight. Because someone inside the royal structure had transformed a private family boundary into an official-looking decision. Once the ring touched the table, Charles stopped behaving like a husband caught between two sides of his family. He became the sovereign. His voice changed. His questions became precise. And for the first time that evening, Camilla appeared genuinely uncertain. Someone had used palace procedure to give a private desire the appearance of royal approval. Now Charles wanted to know whether that mistake came from confusion or from an attempt to force his hand. Charles looked at the Sapphire and made one thing clear. Sensitive royal jewelry did not lose its emotional meaning simply because an internal inventory marked it available. An inventory was only a working record of items and their status. It did not erase family agreements or override the wishes of the sovereign. William immediately reminded him of the October meeting. The prince said the family had already established an understanding that Diana's ring would remain separate from normal seasonal use. Charles then turned to Camilla and asked whether she had personally raised the ring again after that meeting. The queen consort hesitated before admitting that she had asked whether the decision could be reconsidered. She insisted she had never ordered anyone to ignore William. For her, the question had been a request. For the family, it had somehow become permission. The humiliation hit hard. Camilla sat beneath the weight of Charles's questions, while the king struggled with a different pain. Christmas had been meant to show that the family could share one table without dragging old wounds into every conversation. Instead, his former wife's legacy had become the center of another confrontation, and the woman beside him now believed she was being judged against a memory she could never defeat. Charles began reconstructing the chain through the documented account later made of the conversation. Camilla's inquiry had passed from one household official to another, then been interpreted as a request for reconsideration. Somewhere along that path, hesitation had become approval. No direct authorization had come from the monarch. No final consent had come from William. Yet the sapphire still reached the queen. That was enough. Charles ordered the ring removed from all future jewelry selections unless William and Catherine were consulted first. He was not merely settling an argument. He was closing the loophole that had allowed administration to overtake emotion. Camilla understood immediately what the decision meant. The king had chosen the boundary defended by the Waleses. Charles reached across the table, lifted the sapphire, and placed it inside a small jewelry case brought by an aide. He closed the lid and kept his hand there for several long seconds. "It will not be worn again tonight." Camilla said nothing. The decision was unmistakable, but authority could settle the ring's status more easily than it could repair the humiliation now following Camilla out of the banquet room. Camilla did not shout when Charles ruled against her. That would almost have been easier. Instead, she stood in silence, pushed her chair beneath the table, and walked away from Christmas dinner while everyone watched. The queen had lost the argument, but the deeper wound was personal. She believed the family had just declared that some parts of royal history would forever remain closed to her, regardless of the crown she now wore. Charles asked the family to resume dinner, but nothing about the evening felt normal anymore. The celebration had been designed as a private Christmas gathering, a rare space where ceremony could soften into family life. Yet every conversation now sounded careful and forced. Catherine remained composed beside William, but doubt had started to creep in. She still believed stopping the banquet had been necessary. Even so, she wondered whether confronting Camilla before the whole family had turned a painful boundary into a public humiliation. Camilla left before the meal properly restarted. She entered an adjoining private room, pulled a bracelet from her wrist, and placed it sharply on a side table. The queen consort did not need an audience to feel the weight of what had happened. She had spent years building a place beside Charles, only to discover that one piece of jewelry could make that place feel fragile again. Charles followed her and closed the door. Camilla turned toward him and asked the question she had been holding back all evening. Would there ever be a point when being his queen was enough to stop her feeling as though she was entering someone else's life? The king did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, he told her that acceptance could not require William to surrender every boundary connected with Diana. His son had already lost his mother. Asking him to become emotionally neutral about her belongings was not the same as asking him to move forward. Camilla's anger softened into something more revealing. In the private conversation she later described in a documented account, she admitted that she had known the sapphire would be controversial. She believed wearing it at a private family Christmas might finally make the piece feel ordinary, far from cameras and public judgment. In her mind, quiet use could normalize what history had made untouchable. Charles understood the danger instantly. The choice had not been accidental. Camilla may have believed she had permission, but she had knowingly taken an emotional risk. That changed everything. The king now saw why Catherine had reacted so strongly, and why William had gone silent before the anger came. Later, William asked Catherine to speak with him alone. He feared the confrontation had become bigger than Diana's ring. If they were not careful, resentment would define every future gathering. Camilla's confession made the truth harder, not easier, and it forced William and Catherine to decide whether they wanted victory over the Sapphire or something far more difficult: peace. Hours after the banquet stopped, William and Catherine finally stood alone, with no courtiers, no advisors, and no royal machinery between them. The anger had faded enough for something more painful to surface. William admitted that seeing Diana's sapphire on Camilla's hand had struck him far harder than he expected. But he also understood that if the night ended only with humiliation, the ring would have damaged the family twice. William sat beside Catherine after the younger family members had left, and the noise of the evening had finally fallen away. The private sitting room gave them something the banquet had not: space to speak without Charles, Camilla, or palace aides shaping every word. Catherine told him she had halted dinner because she saw his face change the instant he recognized the ring. She knew that staying silent would make the boundary around Diana's jewelry easier to ignore the next time. William took her hand and admitted he was grateful she had acted. But the prince also confessed something harder. He feared his mother's memory was becoming a battlefield, with every object connected to her forcing the family into opposing camps. A legacy piece, an item preserved mainly for its family and historical meaning rather than ordinary use, could not keep becoming a test of loyalty. He did not want Diana remembered through repeated arguments. Catherine understood the danger. She told him she had never wanted Camilla humiliated, even if the confrontation had made that outcome almost unavoidable. The princess wanted one principle recognized: marrying into royal history did not give anyone the right to strip emotionally important objects of their meaning. Camilla could hold her own place beside Charles without needing to absorb every symbol that belonged to the past. William then made the decision that changed the direction of the night. He proposed that the sapphire should belong symbolically to neither woman. Instead, it would be formally reserved as a family legacy piece, connected to Diana and removed from routine personal wear. That way, Catherine would not claim it, Camilla would not wear it, and no future argument could turn possession into victory. Catherine agreed. Then she made the harder choice. She would speak directly with Camilla before morning. She would not apologize for stopping the banquet, because she still believed the intervention was necessary. But she would explain why she had acted without anger standing between them. William squeezed her hand and quietly said he did not want his children inheriting the same unresolved bitterness that his generation had carried for years. Their solution finally gave Charles something he had lacked at the table: a way to protect Diana's memory without turning Camilla's defeat into permanent exclusion. By morning, the family had a possible settlement. But outside palace walls, whispers about the interrupted Christmas banquet were already beginning to escape. Royal disputes rarely stay private once enough people have witnessed their consequences. By the following day, the vanished dinner, Camilla's early departure, and Catherine's sudden intervention had become impossible to hide. But the detail that electrified the public was the sapphire itself. Within hours, one ring had become a symbol onto which people projected everything they believed about Diana, Camilla, Catherine, memory, legitimacy, and the monarchy's ability to respect its own past. Palace staff tried to contain the damage by calling the interrupted dinner a private family matter, but the unusual early movements around Windsor had already raised questions. Charles refused to authorize an aggressive response. A palace position, the carefully agreed wording used to explain a royal matter publicly, could calm speculation or make it worse, and the king wanted the family settlement completed before anyone spoke with authority. Camilla discovered how quickly private pain could become public humiliation when she saw the morning coverage beside her breakfast plate. One major newspaper carried a full-width image of a blue sapphire beneath the headline, "The Ring That Stopped Christmas." The Queen Consort folded the paper once without reading the article and pushed it away. Charles watched her in silence, knowing that the argument he had tried to contain was now being judged by millions. Catherine felt a different kind of discomfort. Public praise began presenting her as the woman who had defeated Camilla, but she had never wanted the night turned into a victory story. William understood why that bothered her. He told the princess that Diana's memory could not become a weapon against another woman, because doing that would repeat the same emotional cycle they were trying to escape. Outside Windsor, the story took on a life of its own. A small crowd gathered near the royal residence, where people debated whether jewelry so closely connected with Diana should ever be worn by Camilla. Some treated the sapphire as sacred memory. Others argued that royal objects could not remain frozen forever. The divide proved exactly why Charles feared careless language. The king finally approved a limited statement. The sapphire would remain preserved within the family's historic collection and would no longer form part of Camilla's personal jewelry rotation. A historic collection meant pieces kept mainly because of their family or royal significance rather than everyday personal ownership. The wording protected Diana's legacy without publicly accusing the queen of wrongdoing. Camilla read the decision quietly. Catherine heard it separately. Neither woman celebrated, because one final matter remained unresolved. They still had to face each other without Charles speaking between them, without William's grief shaping every sentence, and without the sapphire itself sitting at the center of the argument. The public had already chosen its symbols, but the monarchy's real verdict would be decided in one final private conversation between the two women at the heart of the storm. The Christmas banquet had stopped because of a sapphire, but it could not end with a sapphire deciding the future of a family. Catherine and Camilla met privately the next morning, stripped of ceremony and surrounded by none of the people who had witnessed the confrontation. Neither woman pretended the hurt had disappeared. Neither withdrew what she believed. Yet by the time the conversation ended, Diana's ring finally had a place, and so did the boundary the family had failed to define. Catherine spoke first. She told Camilla that stopping the Christmas dinner had never been about denying her place beside Charles. The princess explained that silence had begun to feel like permission, especially after William had already made clear how deeply objects connected with Diana still affected him. A legacy piece, an item preserved mainly because of its emotional and family importance rather than ordinary use, could not be treated like interchangeable jewelry when its meaning was still alive inside the people who remembered where it came from. Camilla listened without interrupting. Then, through the private conversation later preserved in a documented family account, she admitted that she had misjudged what wearing the sapphire would mean to William. The queen consort did not apologize for wanting acceptance. She had spent years trying to create a place that felt completely her own. But she acknowledged something more painful. Borrowing a symbol so closely tied to Diana could never produce the sense of belonging she had hoped it would create. The agreement came quietly. Catherine and Camilla accepted a clear distinction. Diana's deeply personal jewelry would remain protected, according to family wishes, while the queen would build her own royal identity through pieces and symbols belonging to her chapter. Charles confirmed the arrangement soon afterward, and William accepted it, because the decision protected his mother's memory without turning the ring into permanent ammunition against anyone else. Camilla extended her hand before leaving. Catherine paused, then took it. There was no dramatic embrace, and no attempt to pretend one conversation had erased years of tension. What passed between them was simpler and stronger. Recognition. Each woman understood that the other had been defending something she believed was essential to her place within the family. Charles restored the Christmas gathering on a smaller scale. Later that day, Camilla returned without the sapphire. Catherine greeted her without triumph, and William noticed the empty finger but deliberately said nothing. The prince understood that the absence itself was the answer. That became the true meaning of the Christmas banquet. Catherine stopped. The sapphire returned to history. Camilla remained herself. William's boundary was respected. And the monarchy finally learned that moving forward does not require replacing Diana, humiliating another woman, or forcing a son to surrender memory. Sometimes protecting the future begins with refusing to rewrite the past. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.